Hello and very warm welcome at Amish Cycle 5858. I am Amish Cycle. Foreign news have been reported by American, European, Asian, African, Australian news channels and the news agencies. So please let's go to the headlines.
Tonight, breaking news, the deadly U.S. military strike for the first time targeting a vessel in the Pacific. New images tonight, the boat off Central America taking a direct hit, exploding in flames. What President Trump said just moments ago about his authority to target these boats and about potential targets on land. Also tonight, demolition at the White House. Sources now telling ABC News the entire East Wing expected to be demolished as soon as this weekend to make way for President Trump's $300 million ballroom. Tonight, some Republicans now questioning the optics of this amid a government shutdown. And former First Lady Hillary Clinton tonight saying to the American people, it's not his house, it's your house, and he's destroying it. Tonight, a stunning story of survival off Massachusetts. The family on a boat engulfed in flames, jumping off in the middle of the night, swimming on their own to an island where they were stranded. Their dramatic radio call for help. Tonight, Tropical Melissa now expected to become a major hurricane, eventually a Category 4. The newest models in tonight, the potential track. Lee Goldberg is standing by with the forecast. Tonight, anger after ICE sweeps in arrests along New York City's Canal Street, known for tourists and shoppers looking for designer knockoffs. How many people were arrested? And tonight, the new claims about some who were detained. Tonight, deputy charged with murder after the deadly shooting of Sonia Massey in her kitchen in Illinois. The trial has begun, and tonight, hear the key testimony from his own partner on that day. Tonight, images coming in from Ukraine, another Russian attack. This time, kindergartners rushed to safety, surviving while hiding in a shelter. And a short time ago, President Trump tonight on new sanctions against Russia. And the president is asked, why now? Tonight, multi-vehicle crash on the interstate, the truck causing a chain reaction crash, and news coming in now on the driver of that truck. Tonight on the Super Bowl halftime show featuring Bad Bunny, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell breaking his silence for the first time after President Trump sharply criticized his choice. And around the world, you have to hear this young American pianist who won. Making history tonight, his hometown in Massachusetts celebrating and making his professors right here in Philly very proud. From ABC News, this is ABC World News Tonight with David Muir. Reporting tonight. It's the Gutfeld Debate, live from the Gutfeld Debate Center. Hosted by five-time Nobel Peace Prize winner, Ray Gutfeld. Thank you. Hold your applause throughout the debates. Tonight's great debate. The case of a mom and dad who left their 6-month-old baby girl asleep by herself under a tent for an hour on a Florida beach. They were arrested. They spent a night in jail. They were charged with neglect. But the question is, hey, is she single? No, okay. Was that too harsh a punishment or not harsh enough? We debate. Tyrus, a little poor background. The parents said the baby was asleep. And it's the time that she normally naps, and they just lost track of time when they went for a walk with their other young children. Bystanders noticed the baby, called the cops on the parents. They got in trouble. What say you?
Yeah, this happened in Australia, and they had a whole movie about how the dingo ate the baby. Yeah. You don't leave the baby behind. Yeah. You don't do that. Like that was. There's no excuse for that. You cannot in a tent. Yeah. But I get it because it was the third child.
Yes.
The first child, if he breathes slow, you're like, oh no. Yes. The third kid, you're like,
That is so true. I was the fourth kid. They left me out in the woods.
Follow, like I said in my book, Enough Said, I talk about sea turtles. That's exactly how you do it. If you're going to raise your child with the sea turtle philosophy, you put them on a little beach, say good luck, bro, and then you go on your way. So maybe that's, they're going to blame me for that. Never mind, I edit that out.
Kat, you are a first-time mother, and congratulations.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the only reason I did it.
Yeah, you did it for the applause.
Yeah.
Okay, who do you think is worse? The negligent parents or the nosy little nincompoops who knocked on them?
Yeah, I'm tired of all the mom shaming.
Yes.
6 months old is plenty old for a day at the beach by herself. You know, my son's 8 months old. You know what I do sometimes when I can't find a sitter? I just put him on the subway. And then you come back when it goes at the end of the line, and then you come back a few hours later, there he is still.
Yeah.
Because it always comes back around. Now imagine if somebody called and said, "Is there a baby alone on this?" You know, look, I can't imagine doing either one of these things. I feel like I obviously can't imagine leaving my kid alone on the beach, but I also can't imagine, I would feel so wrong calling. I'd be like, well, maybe.
Breaking news tonight, the stunning revelation of the entire east wing of the White House set to be demolished within days, all part of President Trump's extensive ballroom project. The walls of the White House ripped open today, massive machinery tearing into the east wing. The new reporting today on just how expansive the president's plan to build a giant ballroom is. Deadly new U.S. military strike, another alleged drug boat hit, killing 2, this time in the Pacific. What the president just said about attacks on land. Russia's new attacks on Ukraine, striking a kindergarten classroom. Kids rushed from the blast, toys and tiny chairs scattered everywhere. The White House tonight targeting Russia's 2 largest oil companies with sanctions. Our Keir Simmons on the ground in Moscow. The new hurricane threat, Tropical Storm Melissa, drenching the Caribbean and growing stronger. Why the models of its path are so confusing. Terrifying crash landing, a plane smashing into the middle of a crowded soccer field. A woman on the ground hit. And the video just in of another deadly small plane crash. What happened here? The Louvre back open as authorities race to find the stolen jewels. What we're learning about the security camera outside the gallery, why it was facing the wrong way. Amazon's robot revolution will take you inside their lab where AI is growing, and the new opportunity for human employees. The dramatic rescue, a truck dangling off an overpass, the race to save the driver. Medical marvel, a Parkinson's patient playing the clarinet during brain surgery, how it helped her doctors. And Michael Jordan opening up in a revealing new interview why he didn't touch a basketball for years. Nightly News starts right now. This is NBC Nightly News with Tom Yelkins. Good morning to you. It's 6 o'clock on the Breakfast Show. Today, President Trump hits Russia with oil sanctions.
And Phillips is under more pressure to quit over her handling of Ukrainian gas inquiry.
Well, that's to come on Thursday, the 23rd of October. Donald Trump imposes sanctions on Russia's 2 biggest oil funds in a major policy shift. All the survivors who quit the grouping gang's inquiry panel say they'll return if safeguard minister Jeff Phillips quits. Dublin residents angered by allegations of a sexual assault outside a migrant hotel face off with police for a second. And in sport, Liverpool end their run of 4 consecutive defeats with a dominant 5-1 win against Eintracht Frankfurt in the Champions League. Very morning to you. It seems that President Trump's patience with Vladimir Putin's run thin. He's now imposed sanctions on Russia's 2 largest oil companies. It's a move the president's tried to avoid so far amongst the major policy shift from the White House. Mark Stone has the details.
Well, a flurry of news from here at the White House over the course of the evening following the visit of the NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte to Washington. He spent the morning on Capitol Hill talking to lawmakers. He spent the afternoon here at the White House, private meetings with President Trump, who appears to have shifted his position on Ukraine. Again, the imposition of new sanctions against Russia, American sanctions. More on that in a moment. But first, listen to the upbeat Secretary-General talking to us outside the Oval Office.
After you won the election, he said, Mark, I want killing to end. I want the meat grinder to stop. I want no more people lost. This is extremely close to his heart. And then, given his powerful position and his vision on this, he's the only one who can sit down with Putin and gets him to change his calculus. And he may have a bit of benefits to do that. I mean, that is in his remit, and he is doing it in a way I completely support.
So Mark Rutte there disagreeing with the assessment that the American president has flip-flopped in his position on Russia, sometimes being more aligned with Vladimir Putin, sometimes being more aligned with Volodymyr Zelensky. Not so, says the NATO Secretary General, who, it has to be said, has been deploying his very best Trump-whispering skills in the Oval Office. Lots of flattery, lots of praise for the American president, bringing up the ceasefire in Gaza as well. And I think that's interesting because, remember, the ceasefire in Gaza was achieved through an unorthodox method of diplomacy, if you like, by Donald Trump, worrying about the details of the peace afterwards, just getting the war ended now. That's how Donald Trump has managed to get the ceasefire in Gaza. Now it appears they're kind of trying to employ those same tactics, that same Trumpian form of diplomacy of worrying about the details afterwards, stopping the fighting now. They're applying that to Ukraine.
Hopefully he'll become reasonable, and hopefully Zelensky will be reasonable too. You know, it takes two to tango, I think. And we're going to find out. They hate each other. These two people hate each other. You know that better than anybody. And it makes it more difficult than it should be. This should be easier to do. But the level of hatred between Zelensky and Putin is very substantial.
This is DW News, and these are our top stories. Donald Trump says he's imposing new sanctions on Russia over its war on Ukraine. The U.S. president announced the measures as he hosted NATO chief Mark Rutte at the White House. The penalties target Russia's two largest oil companies, Lukoil and Rosneft. The International Court of Justice in The Hague says Israel must allow the UN agency UNRWA to provide aid to Gaza. The ICJ said Israel, as an occupying power, is required to ensure the basic needs of the civilian population. Judges also said Israel had failed to prove its allegation that a significant number of UNRWA employees are members of Hamas. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says the U.S. military has carried out its first strike against a boat alleged to be transporting drugs in the Eastern Pacific. Hegseth said 2 people were killed. This comes after several strikes against alleged drug boats in the Caribbean. The Trump administration says it's engaged in armed conflict with drug cartels. This is DW News from Berlin. You'll find more on our website, dw.com. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance says Gaza's ceasefire is holding up better than expected as he continues his visit to Israel. He's there to back Washington's plan to turn a fragile truce into a framework for rebuilding the territory and then building a wider peace. But that's a long way in the future. The big question for now is security. Jeff Bennett on the NewsHour tonight. President Trump sanctions Russia's 2 biggest oil companies after efforts to end the war in Ukraine faltered.
Pressure mounts to end the U.S. government shutdown as furloughed federal workers struggle to make ends meet and millions of Americans face a spike in healthcare costs.
And caught up in the immigration crackdown, the mother of a disabled teen mistakenly arrested by immigration agents speaks out.
You just can't be targeting people just because, oh, you look like that person, or because you guys got the same color skin.
Major funding.
On this Wednesday night, Ukraine's retaliation could ramp up. the weapons it can now use to hit back at Russia after Russia strikes at kindergarten. A plea to the federal government from wildfire survivors.
Don't let Canada burn.
The three things they're asking for: major failures to lose director on the lapses that allowed that daring heist to happen. Plus, money on the mound.
This feels like a once-in-a-lifetime kind of thing.
Business is banking on a windfall in the World Series. Good evening and thanks for joining us. Hours after the U.S. president shelved plans for a second meeting with Russia's president, Russia launched an intense attack on Ukraine. At least 7 people were killed, including 2 children. Rescuers carried survivors to safety after a kindergarten in Kharkiv took a direct hit. Children are among the 27 injured in the attacks. Ukraine's president says there can be no justification for hitting a school and that it is proof more pressure needs to be put on Russia. This afternoon, the Trump administration did lift a key restriction on Ukraine's use of some long-range missiles provided by Western allies, missiles that are capable of striking deep into Russia. Jackson Prosco has our top story.
The Russian strike on a kindergarten in Kharkiv sent parents scrambling to rescue their children. In Kyiv, Russian missiles struck apartment buildings, killing residents. While waves of drones targeted civilian infrastructure, plunging thousands into the dark. For Ukrainians, there's no sign Russia wants peace. I don't believe in these negotiations. I don't see an end to any of this, says this woman. But NATO's Secretary General isn't giving up.
Well, I have total confidence in President Trump. And he's the only one who can get this done.
In Washington, he met
Liberté, égalité, actualité.
Good morning, I'm Oliver Farian. This is Daybreak, and here are this morning's headlines. Washington imposes sanctions on Russian oil companies over Vladimir Putin's refusal to end the war in Ukraine. The sanctions target Rosneft and Lukoil as the Trump administration ramps up pressure on Vladimir Putin after the US president abandoned plans to meet with his Russian counterpart. Towns in eastern Poland undergo drills to prepare for a possible Russian attack. Authorities have implemented the drills since Russian drones violated Polish airspace last month. We have a report from Admiral Salah and Gulfer Crag. Marco Rubio condemns Israeli plans to annex the occupied West Bank ahead of a visit to the country on Tuesday. The US Secretary of State says that settler violence and a Knesset vote to press ahead with the annexation threaten the ceasefire in Gaza. And coming up in the press review, Iranian citizen Nadia Esfandiari, who was arrested in France, is conditionally released, a deal that could lead to the release of Cécile Kohler and Jacques Marie, a French couple detained in Iran. Ukrainian officials early on Thursday said Russian drones attacked Kyiv for the second night running, with fragments injuring 4 people and damaging buildings in several districts. Meanwhile, Russia's defense ministry on Wednesday said its forces captured 2 more frontline villages in southeast Ukraine and also an island in the south of the country. Ukraine's military also reported success near the town of Dobropilia in the Donetsk region, the heart of the front line, where officials say Kyiv's forces are making headway in a counter-offensive. US President Donald Trump on Wednesday announced massive sanctions targeting Russia's oil industry, which the administration says are aimed at bringing Russian President Vladimir Putin to the negotiating table. These come on top of a new wave of EU sanctions against Moscow, but Washington says the US is still willing to meet with the Russians. Laurent Berstecker has the story.
striking at the heart of the Kremlin's war economy. Donald Trump on Wednesday imposed sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil, Russia's 2 biggest oil companies. It was the first time the US president directly sanctioned Moscow as he sought to pile pressure on Vladimir Putin to end the war in Ukraine.
They're massive sanctions on oil. The 2 biggest oil companies, among the biggest in the world, but they're Russian. They do a lot of oil. And hopefully it'll become reasonable?
The sanctions, which were announced after a meeting with NATO chief Mark Rutte, represented a major U.S. policy shift towards Russia.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Israel's continuing its deadly attacks in Gaza, despite the U.S. brokered ceasefire. Al Jazeera is reporting Gaza received 13 bodies over the past day that Palestinians say they've seen no real change in their lives since the ceasefire. The Nasser Medical Complex in Khan Yunis is reporting Israel's handed over 30 bodies and remains of slain Palestinians. Hamas has handed over the bodies of 15 Israeli hostages as part of the ceasefire deal. On Wednesday, a funeral was held for 54 unidentified Palestinians returned by Israel. It comes as the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, says the amount of aid currently entering Gaza is a, quote, drop in the ocean of what's urgently needed. Here's Abir Atifa of the World Food Programme.
Since the ceasefire started on the 11th of October, we now have over 530 trucks into Gaza supporting bakeries, nutrition programs, general food distributions. So far, we've had over 6,700 tons of food. That's enough for close to 500,000 people for 2 weeks. Daily deliveries continue, and they are now averaging around 750 tons. That's much better than what we had before the ceasefire, but it's still well below our target, which is around 2,000 tons every day.
The Palestinian Prisoner Society says Israeli forces have detained 45 people, including a child, in raids since last night in the occupied West Bank. The group describes Israeli forces have vandalized homes and repeatedly assaulted detainees and their relatives. It comes
Is Asia Now.
It's 12 p.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 9:30 in New Delhi, 11 o'clock in Jakarta. I'm Rani Samtani. At this hour, President Donald Trump piles the pressure on Moscow to negotiate a peace deal in Ukraine. The U.S. targeting Russia's biggest oil companies with fresh sanctions, causing oil prices to jump. The U.S. reportedly considering a plan to curb exports to China made with or containing American software in what's seen as retaliation for Beijing's rare earth export restrictions ahead of an expected meeting between Presidents Trump and Xi Jinping next week. And the International Olympic Committee slams Indonesia over its exclusion of Israeli athletes at the World Artistic Gymnastics Championships. It suggests that no major sporting competitions should be held in the country.
BBC News app or visit the website.
Today, the UN's highest court rules that Israel must allow aid groups full access to Gaza, that its restrictions breached international law. The White House unveils new sanctions on Russia after President Trump cancels a planned summit with Vladimir Putin. The New South Wales MP uses parliamentary privilege to name a man who confessed to killing a 3-year-old girl 55 years ago. And record-breaking heat sweeps through Queensland with residents warned of increased fire danger. Welcome to ABC News. I'm Ross Childs. The United Nations highest court has ruled that Israel.
President Trump's expanding high construction project includes demolishing the entire East Wing to make way for his massive wall.
We're very proud of it. It's got great reviews. It's got really great reviews.
Another U.S. military strike on an alleged drug boat. This time in the Pacific, the growing number of casualties and concerns about the operation.
A school bus bursts into flames. The mom will race to the rescue.
And it's raining monkeys in Florida. What's behind this mass primate plunge?
For a to CBS News headquarters in New York. This is the CBS Evening News. Good evening, I'm Maurice Dubois.
I'm John Dickerson.
We're here tonight with President Trump's expanding plans to architecturally transform the White House.
Which
Africa News. The news.
It is the first summit between Egypt and the EU. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi arrived in Brussels for the high-level meeting that took place on Wednesday. Both parties are notably seeking to improve economic and political relations through the inaugural summit. Europe remains Egypt's most important trade partner, but the bloc and Cairo also want to reinforce their partnership on questions of migration and security. The European Council meeting on the day after will also build on exchanges with Egypt concerning the situation in Gaza. Egypt is one of the mediating countries between Hamas and Israel. Aside from top EU officials, among them Ursula von der Leyen, the Egyptian leader also met with Belgium's King Philippe. Tensions within the North Atlantic Treaty Alliance as a vast investigation into suspected irregularities in the agency's awarding of arms contracts continues. Three Belgian media, together with a Dutch investigative website, found that several former and current NATO employees are accused of accepting bribes between 2021 and 2025. This involves contracts issued by the NATO-supported procurement agency, which manages multi-billion euro defence purchases on behalf of the alliance's 32 member states. La Lettre de Soin, NAC and Follow the Money say the men allegedly received tens of thousands of euros for passing confidential information to defence firms seeking to secure lucrative contracts. At least 3 people were arrested in May as part of an investigation into the alleged corruption at the Luxembourg-based agency. At the time, an operation dubbed Clean Hands was initiated with participation by several agencies, including the NSPA, the FBI, and the European Judicial Agency. These investigations are ongoing. NATO on Monday reaffirmed its zero-tolerance policy towards fraud and corruption, stressing its commitment to transparency.
Two buses and 2 other vehicles crashed early Wednesday on a highway in western Uganda, killing at least 46 people, according to the police, in one of the worst motor accidents in the East African country in recent years. Police initially gave the death toll at 63 in a statement sent to reporters, but later revised it to 46. It was about midnight when I got a call to come and help people. So I called the ambulance, and that's what you see here. The buses collided, and people were killed. Children and all the drivers died on the spot. Many children, 4 years, 5 years. And there was also the Congolese who got trapped in the wreckage.
Thank you for watching Amish Shakil 5858. I am Amish Shakil. I hope you will visit again. Have a good life. Bye-bye.